September 11th, 1906, Volume 7. Everything which is not done for the glory of God remains obscured. As I was in my usual state, I found myself with baby Jesus in my arms in the midst of many people, and he said to me, "My daughter, all the works, words, and thoughts of creatures should be sealed with the mark, Gloriam Dei, Gloriam Dei. And everything which is not sealed with this mark remains obscured, and as though buried in darkness, stained, or at the most as something of no value. So the creature does nothing other than pull out darkness and abominable things from herself, because by not operating for the glory of God, the creature runs away from the purpose for which she was created. She is as though lost from God and left alone with herself. God alone is light, and it is through God that human actions acquire value. Now what is the wonder if the creature, by not operating for his glory, remains buried in her own darkness, and gains nothing from her toils? On the contrary, she loads herself with heavy debts. To our great bitterness, we looked at all those people as though buried in darkness. In order to distract blessed Jesus from that bitterness, I would clasp him and kiss him, and almost wanting to play with him, I would say to him, "Say with me, I give such power to the prayer of this soul as to concede what she asks of me." But he would not listen to me, and I, wanting to force him to say it with me, would renew the kisses, the embraces, and would repeat, "Say it! Say it together with me," the same words written above. I did so much that it seemed he said them, and I found myself inside myself, surprised at my daringness and madness, and I felt ashamed of myself. September 11th, 1910, Volume 9. Jesus wants love, truth, and rectitude from souls. A soul perfectly united to the divine will makes mercy win over justice. Continuing in my usual state, it seemed that the confessor put the intention of making me suffer the crucifixion. After some hardships, benign Jesus concurred a little and told me, "My daughter, because of the world I cannot take any more. Many move me to indignation, and snatch scourges from my hands by force." And while he was saying this, there seemed to be a pouring rain that was causing damage to the vineyards. Then I prayed for the confessor, who seemed to be there present. I wanted to take his hands, to have him touched by Jesus, and it seemed that Jesus did it. I prayed him to tell what he wanted from Father, and Jesus said to him, "I want love, truth, and rectitude. That which renders man most dissimilar from me is not being armed with these prerogatives." And as he said love, he seemed to seal all of his members, his heart, his intelligence, with love. Oh, how good is Jesus! Then afterwards, having told Father what I wrote on the 9th, I remained doubtful, and I said to myself, "How I wish I would not have to write these things. If it is true that Jesus suspends the scourge to content me, or if it is my fantasy." And Jesus told me, "My daughter, justice and mercy are in a continuous fight, and the victories of mercy are more than those of justice. Now when a soul is perfectly united with my will, she takes part in my actions ad extra, and as she satisfies with her sufferings, mercy obtains its most beautiful victories over justice. And since I delight in crowning all of my attributes with mercy, even justice itself, in seeing myself being importuned by the soul united with me, in order to content her, I surrender to her, because she has surrendered all of her things in my will. This is why I do not come when I do not want to surrender, because I do not trust that I can resist without surrendering. So what is your doubt? September 11th, 1922, Volume 14. The primary purpose of all that God has done in creation and redemption is that the creature would live in the divine will. Only in the divine will is there true rest. Continuing in my usual state, I was abandoning all of myself in the holy will of my sweet Jesus, and feeling the need to rest, I said to myself, also my sleep in your will. I want nothing else but to take true rest in the arms of your volition. And Jesus, daughter, lay your rest as a mantle over all creatures, so as to cover them all, because only in my will is there true rest. And since it envelops everything, as you rest in my will, you will lay yourself over all, in order to impetrate true rest for all. How beautiful it is to see a creature of ours resting in the arms of our will. But in order to find true rest, it is necessary that she put all of her acts, her words, her love, her desires, and so forth, on their way within our will, so that as they take their place in it, they may receive rest, and I may rest in them. Only then do all works give rest when they are fulfilled. But if they are not fulfilled, they always give some concern, something to do, which renders true rest restless. Now the fulfillment of the work of creation was that man would do our will in everything. Our will was to be the life, the food, the crown of the creature. And since it is not yet so, the work of creation is not yet fulfilled, and neither can I rest in it, nor can it rest in me. It gives me always something to do, and I yearn for this fulfillment and rest. This is why I love and want so much that the way of living in my will be known. Nor will I ever be able to say that the works of creation and redemption are fulfilled if I do not have all the acts of the creature extending in my will, like a bed to give me rest. And I, what beautiful rest shall I not give to her in seeing her coming back on the wings of our will, with the seal of the fulfillment of creation? My womb will be her bed. Therefore there is nothing I did, which did not have as primary purpose that man take possession of my will and I of his. This was my primary purpose in creation, the same in redemption. The sacraments I instituted, the many graces given to my saints, have been the seeds, the means, to let man reach this possession of my will. Therefore neglect nothing of what I want about my will, both with writing and with words, and with works. From this alone you can know that the living in my will is the greatest thing, the most important, that which interests me the most, from the so many preparations that have preceded it. And do you want to know where this seed of my will was sown? In my humanity. In it, it germinated, was born, and grew. This seed can be seen in my wounds, in my blood, wanting to be transplanted into the creature, so that she may take possession of my will and I of hers, and so that the work of creation may return to the origin from which it came, not only through my humanity, but also through the creature herself. They will be few, be it even one alone. Was it not one alone, he who withdrawing from my will, disfigured and broke my plans, and destroyed the purpose of creation? In the same way, one alone can adorn it and fulfill its purpose. However, my works never remain isolated, so I will have the army of the souls who will live in my will, and in them I will have my creation restored, all beautiful and striking, just as it came out of my hands. Otherwise, I would not have so much interest in making my will known. September 11th, 1924, Volume 17. Prayers and Laments. Terrible Opposition. Effects of one who opposes the divine will. I was feeling very disturbed, and I prayed Jesus to have compassion for me and to take full care of my poor soul. And I said to him, "Oh, please, take even everyone away from me, as long as you alone remain with me. You alone are enough for me. After so long, you should have made me content, more so since I ask for nothing but you alone." When this was happening, I was in that state of immobility of the night, from which the confessor must free me by calling me to obedience in the morning, before celebrating Holy Mass. Now, while I was saying these and other things, my Jesus took my arm, as if he himself wanted to free me, therefore doing the office of my confessor. Oh, how happy I felt in seeing that my Jesus was doing that! I thought to myself, finally, the hardest of my sacrifices is over. But vain and fleeting happiness! As Jesus took my arm, at that very moment he ran away, and I was left in my usual state, without being able to regain consciousness. Oh, how I cried, and I prayed that he would have compassion for me. Then, after a few hours, my adorable Jesus came back, and seeing me crying and all embittered, said to me, "My daughter, do not cry. Don't you want to trust your Jesus? Let me do, and do not take things lightly. Rather, oh, how many sad things are about to happen. My justice can no longer hold back its thunderbolts to strike the creatures. They are all about to break out, one against the other. And when you hear the evils of your brothers, you will feel remorse for your oppositions to your usual sacrifice, as if you too had contributed to push my justice to strike the creatures." On hearing this, I said, "My Jesus, let this never be, nor do I want to withdraw from your will. On the contrary, I beg you to free me from the ugliest of misfortunes, that of not doing your most holy will. I do not ask you to free me from suffering. Rather, feel free to increase it. The only thing I ask of you, as a grace I want from you, always if you want it, is that you free me from the bother I give to the confessor. This is too hard for me, and I feel I do not have the strength to bear it. So only if you please. Otherwise give me more strength. But do not permit that your most holy will be not fulfilled upon me." And Jesus, continuing to speak, added, "My daughter, remember that I asked of you a yes in my will, and you pronounced it with all love. That yes still exists and holds its prime place in my unending will. Everything you do, think, and say is bound to that yes, which nothing can escape. And my will enjoys and makes feast in seeing a will of creature live in my will. And I keep filling her with new graces, making of all of your acts divine acts. This is the greatest portent which exists between heaven and earth. It is the object most dear to me. And if that yes were to be snatched from me, may this never be, I would feel like being torn from myself, and I would cry bitterly. Observe, as you made that little opposition, your yes trembled with fright. At that trembling, the foundations of heaven were shaken, trembling. All the saints and all the angels and all the sphere of eternity looked with horror and with sorrow, feeling an act of divine will being ripped from them, because since my will enwraps everyone and everything, they felt the acts done by you as one thing with themselves, and so all felt that painful tearing. I could say that all took the attitude of profound sorrow. Frightened by the words of Jesus, I said, "My love, what are you saying? Is this possible? All this trouble? Your words make me die of pains. Oh, please forgive me. Have mercy on me, who am so bad, and confirm my yes by binding me more tightly to your will. Even more, make me die, rather than letting me go out of your will." And Jesus again, "My daughter, calm down. As soon as you placed yourself again in my will, all things regained calm and took the attitude of a new feast. May your yes continue its rapid rounds within the immensity of my will. Ah, daughter, neither you nor those who direct you have known what it means to live in my will. This is why you do not appreciate it, and keep it as a thing of no importance. And this is a pain for me. On the contrary, this is the thing which interests me the most, and which should, more than anything else, interest all. But alas, they pay attention to other things, things which are less pleasing or indifferent to me, rather than to that which glorifies me the most, and which gives them also on this earth immense and eternal goods, rendering them owners of the goods which my will possesses. See, my will is one, and embraces all eternity. Now, by living in my will and by making it her own, the soul comes to take part in all the joys and goods that my will contains, and she becomes the owner of them. And even though while being on earth she does not feel all those joys and goods, by keeping them in deposit within her will, by virtue of my will done on earth, when she dies and finds herself up there in heaven, she will feel all those joys and goods which my will delivered in heaven while she was living on earth. Nothing will be taken away from her. On the contrary, it will be multiplied. In fact, if the saints enjoy my will in heaven because they live in it, it is always enjoying that they live in glory, while the soul who lives in my will on earth lives suffering, and it is not appropriate for her to have that joy and those goods which are reserved for her in heaven with greater abundance because of the work she has done and her living in my divine will. So how many immense riches does one who live in my will on earth not take in heaven? I can say that all eternity wanders around her to enrich her and to make her happy. She is deprived of nothing of all that the divine will contains. She is its daughter, its very will, and it loves her so much that all its joys are placed in common with her. Therefore, be attentive, my daughter, and do not want to oppose my designs which I made upon you. September 11th, 1938, Volume 36. One act done in the divine will is everything. Jesus grows his life in those who live in it. Horrible state of God in those who live on human will. Every time a creature enters into our will, we renew our works. I feel the sea of the divine will always murmuring inside and outside of me, and very often it forms its waves, very, very high ones, and inundates me so much that I feel it as being greater than my life. Oh, divine will, how much you love me, so much that you want to give yourself always, without ceasing, to form your life in my poor soul. Your love is such that it besieges me with light, love, and sighs to obtain the purpose. Then my always adorable Jesus, taking me by surprise, told me, "My blessed daughter, our fulfilled will encloses all the glory that the creature can give us, the love with which we have to love her, and the love with which she must love us. Therefore, in one act of our fulfilled will, we can say that we've done everything, we have given everything, even ourselves, and we have received everything. In fact, by living in it, we give all to the creature, she takes all, and can give us all. On the other hand, if she does not live in our will, if our will is not fulfilled, we cannot give everything. She will be incapable of receiving our love or of loving us as much as we want to be loved. We are not happy to give from ourselves almost in tiny little pieces, as if we were poor. We do not like to half give our things. Being able to give and not to give is always a suffering for us. Our love remains repressed and makes us delirious. This is why we want the soul to live in our divine volition. We want to give all, always, without ever ceasing. Our divine being is never exhausted. The more we give, the more we can give, and giving for us is relief and happiness, is expression of love, is communication of the life that we do. My love is so great that I remain in the soul to grow. Now, having to grow myself, I watch over her continuously, so that what she does may serve to make known and grow my life within her. I use her acts and her love to form my limbs, my heart, the food to feed myself, and the clothes to cover me and give me warmth. I remain always in the attitude of unifying her motion with mine, her breath with mine, in order to find her motion inside mine and her breath as if it were mine. I let nothing escape me, nothing of what she does, thinks, says, works, or suffers, because it has to serve me and make my life grow. Therefore I am always in action. I never give myself any rest. Oh, how glad I am! How happy I feel to be always busy in my work of making myself grow within her. I did not create the creature so that she would remain isolated. Certainly not. She was my work, so I had to do it in order to form a work worthy of myself. But if she does not live in my will, I don't find the raw material with which to form and grow my life. We live as if far away, as isolated, and loneliness saddens me. Silence is heavy. If I am not able to do my work, I have fidgets of love, and I feel like a god made unhappy by his creatures. Therefore, my daughter, be attentive. Live always in my will. Give me your acts. Let me work, and do not keep me within you as a god who couldn't and wouldn't know how to do anything. Actually, I have to do the greatest work, growing and forming my life, that will be so beautiful as to form the sweet enchantment of the whole celestial court. On the other hand, in the creature who doesn't live in our will, our state is horrible. Our life remains as if strangled, broken, divided by the human will, whose acts cannot serve to form and grow our life. Rather, they serve to break it in such a way that one foot is someplace, one hand in another, one eye somewhere else. We feel pity for ourselves, being so shattered, since our will is one. Where it reigns, it forms one act out of many, to form one single life. The human will, instead, can only do fragmented acts, with no virtue of uniting themselves. Rather, they break our divine life into pieces within them. There is not a scene more horrible that would make even the stones cry than seeing in the soul who does her will the harrowing way in which she reduces our life within her, her shameful acts, degenerating from the origin of her creation and dissimilar from the Creator, form the knife that cuts our divine life into pieces. What a sorrow for us! How deformed and dishonored our creative work remains! How destroyed our scope for creation! Ah, if we were capable of pain, the human will would embitter the ocean of our immense joys and happiness. Then I was following all that the divine will did, both in the creation and in the redemption, and I found all in action, as if everything wanted to give itself to me. My sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, everything that has been done by our Supreme Being is all in action, as if we were in the act of doing it for love of the creatures, since all our works were done for them. Now the creature that enters our divine will finds all the other creatures. All want to give themselves to her, so she, feeling loved, makes them her own, loving them and loving us for all the gifts we give her. In return for each of our gifts, she would give us her life in gratitude, in appreciation, and to thank me for all the things we gave her. So, she feels as if receiving the gift of the sun, of the starry heaven, of the sea and wind, of the whole creation, and more, my birth, my tears, my works, my steps, my sufferings, and the love with which I loved her, and I still do. Oh, how happy she feels, and making all our works and my very life her own. She loves us in the sun, and in all other things, with that same love with which I created it. She loves me in my birth, in my tears, in my steps, in my pains, in everything. Oh, how she delights and glorifies us, and our joy is such that it gives us the opportunity to renew our works, as if we were creating them again. So our love overflows from us, investing all with new love. Our power is redoubled to sustain all. Our wisdom puts all into order, while our creative work runs through the whole creation and redemption, to say to the creature, everything is yours. Every single time you enter into our will, recognizing these gifts and making them yours, you are giving us the opportunity and the glory, as if we were repeating again all that we have done for love of the creatures. Our will is the repeater of all our works. It repeats them, renews them always and every instant, each time the creature wants to receive them. And while they give themselves, they remain at their place. They give themselves still remaining. By giving themselves, they lose nothing. Rather, they are more glorified. Therefore, be attentive to live always in our will. End of September 11th. Fiat.